Welcome to Wearing History. Today we're going to be looking at an original 1910s lingerie blouse, and I'm going to show you how to plan a project using this as inspiration. This blouse came from an estate sale where I found it in a bin with a lot of other antique trims. The lady was a quilt maker and a doll maker. It kind of looks like it went through a horror movie. Even with soaking, this is as clean as I could get it, but it still makes a really great example of how they would have used trims in the time period and the order in which I think that it was assembled. That can help you plan your projects, seeing the different laces, the order of assembly, and the creative ways that they use trim and border edging to make a blouse in this time period. It's relatively simple, front, back, and sleeve with a gimp sewn in. And for this pattern, I would suggest Wearing History number 1005, which is my 1910s blouse and gimp pattern. Now I have it laying flat, and first let me say something. I've been collecting these since I was a teenager, different types of Edwardian whites or 1910s whites, and it never ceases to amaze me how things are put together. There are absolutely no rules. You did whatever you wanted to get the effect that you wanted to get. This one is probably middle class, lower end bodice, which would have been part of a dress. It was chopped off here at some point, probably by a crafter. I found it at a quilter's and doll maker's estate sale. And it looks like it went through some sort of horror movie. I did soak it. This is as clean as I could get it. So for $5, I'd figured we'd use it as a demo of sorts to show what's going on here. The first thing I want to note to you while you're figuring out a pattern, and I'd suggest my 1910s blouse and gimp for this, is it's a really basic bodice. There's a front, there's a back, there's a sleeve. And that's about it. There is a little bit of a difference going on up here. This one has a V-neck, and inside the V-neck is sewn a gimp. So this is the part that would give you the neck coverage. So instead of being a separate piece, they left it in and they actually just left the extra fabric here. A lot of times on the insides, things are a lot less neat than we are critical of for ourselves today. The other thing to notice is this tuck right here. There's a tuck on either side. This is sort of a carryover from the earlier styling. It just gave you a little bit more movement in the bust area. This is super easy to draft into the pattern. There are almost no gathers on the sleeves. It's very, very light easing here. And then there's a little bit of gathering into a fitted cuff here, which you see mostly on the back side. So it's a V-neck with a gimp, tucks, simple sleeve, about 3/4 length. This would have hit about 2 to 3 inches above the natural waist, which puts it around 1913, 14-ish. Although it came in 1908, it got to be mainstream fashion in 12, 13, 14 before it completely changed due to World War I. We're going to look at what elements we need to plan if you want to recreate something like this. So I've grabbed a pencil and a piece of paper. We're going to start from the base out, which means the lowermost level until the uppermost level. And the lowermost level would be this panel here, which is a plain cotton. You could use a lawn. You want to try to get it to match to the other fabrics, but I'll talk about that in a second. So number one, base fabric. And that is for that front inset. Number two, you need a lace right here. 1, 2, 3. Evenly spaced, and this is about 7/8 of an inch wide, but you can use whatever you've got. This is applied, importantly, on top of the base fabric. A lot of times you'll see different construction where you have the fabric lapped over. That's not the case here. This is applied on top of the base fabric. This is very common in modern heirloom sewing. So to the base fabric, we are adding 7/8 inch insertion. Base fabric insertion. 1, 2, 3 of those. Next is this piece. And this looks super complicated, but it's actually not at all. This would have been purchased yardage that has an edge on it, like we call border print. It's a border embroidery. You can still get these today. In the period, they also had them. So this is actually created from a border fabric. So you've got a cotton border. You'll notice on the side that the border goes like this. So the pattern goes all the way over here. And then this mimics this, which tells me this fabric most likely was wider. And they used this section as the lower part And then the upper section probably had a design with pin tucks, and they used that for the sleeves and the back. So this would have been one fabric. Less likely to find today with pin tucks. However, you can still find some from India that are pin tucked all over the fabric. Sometimes heirloom sewing shops will also have it. It's usually imported from Switzerland and can be quite pricey. So you could recreate this pin tucking if you wanted to. I'm probably just going to go with something really basic. So we've got the base layer, the lace, the border embroidery. The other side of the embroidery would have been the back and the sleeve. You can also use, like I said, separate border embroidery and separate base fabric, but make sure they match. Let me show you a border embroidered period fabric so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Here's one that I've salvaged from a petticoat. Actually, it came to me this way. It is a bottom of a petticoat here, which I've soaked so it's nice and white, but it is the border design. It's very uncommon to find them this lightweight unless they're Swiss fabrics these days, but India makes some pretty great border embroideries. This is original yardage, and the way I can tell is because this design is mimicked up here in a cut edge at the top of the fabric. You can see that this is the scallop that is from down here. So it was made wide and then they were cut in half. So this is how it originally was. This is probably later. This might be mid-century. So mid-1900s, excuse me. So if I was going to do this, I would have my base fabric first, and then I would apply this on top here, and I would create a flat surface. And then from that flat surface, I would cut this bodice piece and the back bodice. So if we're making our supply list, we need a border embroidery, we need a base fabric, we need a lace insertion for the front, and we need either the same fabric as here or an alternate fabric that matches your border embroidery. This lace is the same exact lace as here. So you would buy extra for the beginning V. So this lace is the same as this lace is the same as this lace. So the V and then the 3 insertions, they are all made up of this same length. So you would get enough to go around the entire neckline, including the back, with a mitered edge, and then the 3, 1, 2, 3 embroidered. Then you have your wide insertion here. And this is a machine made like a chemical lace, I think they call them. This one is about 1 3/4 inches wide, so I'm going to add that to my potential shopping list. And when I say insertion lace, that means there's a header at the top that's straight and there's a header at the bottom that's straight. So there's no scalloped edges. That's any kind of lace can be an insertion lace as long as it has a header at the top and the bottom. So we've got 1 lace, 2 lace, border, base fabric, and now this. This is an interesting little trim. It's just a little fold. You would have bought this by the yard. So it's a double edge of like a lawn. I think I'm going to skip that on mine, but you could always put any sort of cotton trim there. So that would be number 3. This is the neckline edge finish without the gimp. So you would put solid edging maybe for neck. Then you have this. This is a base fabric that would have been an all-over lace. So we would put all-over lace for gimp. And a gimp, like I said again, is something that gives coverage. So it's for modesty or to make a high neckline. And then at the top of the gimp is this little tiny edging. And this is probably about 3/16 wide. Yeah, about 3/16 inch wide. So I'm going to put lace edging, 3/16 inch wide for collar edge. When I say lace edging, that is a lace that has one header that attaches on the straight and then one scalloped edge. That's a lace edging because the scallop will create a finished edge. Let's look at the sleeve. Again, same lace here as here and here, same lace here as here and here, same lace here as here, same edging here as the neckline, and then we have this lovely chemical edging lace. So we would measure, this one is about probably 1.75 inches. So I'm going to write that down too. Lace edging for sleeves, 1.75 inches wide. So let me organize this by making a dot next to the laces. So this is a lace, this is a lace, for gimp, lace edging, this is a lace, this is a lace, and okay. Fabrics, you're going to get your base fabric, which will be plain cotton. You're going to get your cotton border fabric, which will be for the edges. You are going to get an all-over lace for your gimp. And then for your trims, you have 7/8 inch insertion lace for the front base, for the neckline, and for the sleeves. You have 1.75 inch insertion lace, which goes for the V neckline and the sleeve. You have 3/16 inch for the collar edge at the high neck, and you have 1.75 inch lace edging for the bottom of the sleeves. So this would be everything that they would have had to create this one bodice. So you can see it's quite a lot. When you're looking at yardages, you're going to want to draw on your pattern piece and then measure that and allow for shrinkage, because a lot of times if you're doing heirloom sewing, you're going to soak them before you assemble them, and then you will spray starch them, and then you will sew them together, and then you can wash it again and it will not shrink. So that's what a lot of times is done in modern heirloom sewing. In period sewing, especially production, they most likely did not wash anything. You got it, and if it shrunk, just like modern clothes, that's what you got. So let's go over this one more time with the bodice so you can see what I mean. Starting from the inside out. Base fabric, insertion on top of that. Apply that to your pattern. Lay these on top to make your front. Cut your back and sleeve out of the border fabric or a matching fabric. Then you sew at the shoulder seams, the front to the back. Before you attach the sleeve, you're going to be working on the neckline. To make the neckline, you are going to start probably at this neck edge. So baste this down, baste this down, baste this down, then sew them all to place. Finish the neck with this. Then set your sleeves. We missed a lace. Set your sleeve. Then finish the armhole with a lace edging. Afterwards, cut all of that away from underneath. All of it. So that this is see-through. This is the base fabric. Anything that you built on from here on up is gone. And you'll just have this and it'll be see-through. After the whole bodice is together and you've done your fasteners on the back, then you make your gimp. Your gimp can be made from the same pattern. It can be made from my 1910s pattern. Make the gimp and then baste the gimp in. It sounds super complicated, but I just want to give an example of how you break down something like this to make it. Let's look at the sleeve for a minute. The sleeve shows me that this would have been constructed with the lace before the underarm seam went in. The reason I can tell is because this doesn't match up exactly. The seam up here is joined before this underarm seam is done. So this is sewn around, this is sewn around, this is sewn around. While it's flat, then you do this seam, and you can tell because of the order of the seams that are right here. This is the last seam that was done, because see that lap right there? This is the last seam that was done. do your sleeve, put your lace on your sleeve, then set your sleeve, then finish the armhole with lace. This is the inside. In the period, they simply would have turned it back and then snipped it away. Sometimes that phrase these days, this was done with a straight stitch by machine. I usually use a zigzag because that helps encase the raw edges. Now let's talk about these pin tucks for a second. These would have been on the fabric that was purchased. These would not have been done by the home sewer. They would not have been done by the production sewer. These would have been a fabric that was already purchased. It would have been made as part of the production process for this blouse, which makes it look more expensive than it actually would have been. Because making a blouse from pre-pin tucked fabric that was available commercially was a huge, huge time saver. Interestingly, I love that they cut the back of the bodice with it going up and down, and they cut the sleeve with it going side to side. It just mimics that these were made by hand, but they weren't. It was fabric that was available at that time. And let's look up close at the collar and how it was attached. Again, just big machine sewing stitches here. I really think this was probably made in a factory. And you can also see remnants here of where it was clipped away from different things. You can also tell in the construction, like I said, the shoulder seam was done first, and then the collar was applied on top. And this was all made with like mitered edges. The reason you can tell is because this seam is folded down and stitched on top of. There's no join here, so the order of production would have been shoulder seam first and then neckline. And looking in here, this straight application here, it's just a really quick and easy way for them to finish the neckline. I realize I'm babbling a little bit in this video. I hope you can make sense of my babbling. I'm trying to figure out the process as I'm showing it to you, but I just want to show you how you can have a simplified version of something that was high fashion. This was made quickly and easily by someone, not as quickly as a basic bodice, but with a few trims, simple bodice pattern, and a little bit of creativity, you can really make something stand out and be really unique. I hope you like this. You can find my pattern for the 19 blouse in GIMP on wearinghistorypatterns.com and Wearing History on Etsy. Maybe I'll do another one where I actually construct a bodice. I am in need of a bodice. So follow me on YouTube, please, and have a wonderful time sewing your creations.